Hello to the three people watching. It is I, the one guy who used to stream on Discord and also used to say I would make them into videos. Well, here's a video, but this one is a bit different. Today I'll be reviewing my top 10 favorite games of 2020. 2020, despite being a god-awful year, was a big year in gaming for me. I got my first actual PC, discovered plenty of new games, and of course I got a 16,000 Indonesian rupiah tip from work, which doesn't have anything to do with gaming, but it was still very cool. So this is a list of games that I have played this year. I haven't finished all of them, but they were really good nonetheless. So let's start off with number 10. Phasmaphobia is a co-op horror game where you play as ghost hunters who enter various buildings and attempt to discover the type of ghost being dealt with. The graphics aren't the best, and the gameplay itself is quite repetitive, but what makes it fun is the multiplayer. Being able to communicate with your friends with a radio as you explore different rooms, reporting what you find, and being able to just fool around in general is quite enjoyable. I haven't played too much of this game, but I can certainly say it's fun. Cory and the Blind Forest is a 2D Metroidvania game where you play as a spirit named Ori, who restores the three elements of light throughout the world of Nibel. This game's story is honestly incredible, and it is one of the three games that has made me cry. The prologue is just so goddamn sad. The only reason this game isn't any higher on my list is because the gameplay is not the best. Attacking is fairly boring as you just spam X when an enemy is nearby, and a floating orb named Insane attacks for you. The game makes up for this with its incredible storyline. The visuals in the game are another amazing thing. The art is just beautiful and overall pleasing to look at, and the music is just incredible. Despite only playing this game in March this year, every time I listen to it, I get very nostalgic. I highly recommend this game to any lovers of story games. Hyper Light Drifter is a top-down action-adventure RPG in the classic 16-bit art style with a modernized gameplay mechanics. I haven't finished this game quite yet, and its story is pretty vague, so I'm not too sure what the story behind it is, but it's still a great experience nonetheless. The music is beautiful and very atmospheric, and the sound design is brilliantly done as well. Gameplay's a lot tougher than it seems, and really fun once you get the hang of it. The sword to attack with, an array of guns, a dash that can be changed later on to do multiple quick dashes, and many upgrades to those abilities to further enhance the combat system. Also, you can play soccer against a literal goblin child. What else could you ask for in a game? Celeste is a 2D precision platformer where you play as Madeline, a woman trying to climb Celeste Mountain to conquer her anxiety and, as the game puts it, inner demons. The game has a classic 8-bit art style and really tight controls. There are only 3 basic moves: a jump, a climb, and a dash. However, later levels require you to combo those moves to perform several other advanced difficult platforming techniques. With 9 chapters and 2 shorter remixes of each chapter, with the exception of Chapter 9, this game has plenty of content and replayability. The soundtrack is also just so good, and each song seems to fit perfectly where it plays. I highly recommend this game to any fans of platformers, though do note that this game can be gruelingly difficult at times, but it's very fun all the way through. Also, fuck Mirror Temple. Ori and the Will of the Wisps is the sequel to Ori and the Blind Forest. In this game, Ori helps his friend, companion, sibling, his owl, Ku, learn to fly. They go for a ride, and they end up leaving Nibel and getting separated in a storm in a new land called Niwen. Your goal is to find Ku and return home. This game has one of the best endings in any game I've ever played, and it made me cry almost as much as I did when my favorite cat, Cody, died. The thing that Will of the Wisps does better than Blind Forest is the gameplay. All the abilities from Blind Forest are back, plus a few more, and instead of spamming X to shoot homing projectile, you actually get a sword. And with new combat comes exciting boss battles. There aren't very many, but the few there are very enjoyable. My favorite had to be Mora, the giant spider in the Molewood Depths. My favorite part about this game is the antagonist. Now there will be spoilers for this next part, so you can skip to the marked timestamp on screen if you haven't played the game yet. Shriek is a phenomenal villain, absolutely incredible design, and the encounters you have with her are all so well done that the fear of her remains until the very end. A lot of games make the mistake of giving big villains health bars and predictable attack patterns too early in a game. With Shriek, she's a terrifying menace the whole way through, especially when you first meet her in the Silent Woods. I was so tense during that part, right until she curb-stomped Ku. Then I was literally crying. The game also retains the incredible visual style, music, and story as the first game. I can't recommend this game enough to fans of story games or people who enjoyed the first game. Terraria is a 2D pixelated survival game where you play as just some guy who appeared in the world one day. Now I should note I had played this game previously, however I played it on mobile, which hadn't gotten the 1.3 update for a very long time, and when it did, the controls made the game unplayable. Plus Journey's End released this year, which added a ton of new content. Terraria has some really well done gameplay mechanics, which steer you towards playing as one of 4 classes: melee, range, magic, and summoning. Well, what's great is the game doesn't force you to just pick one. You can combine multiple classes if you want, or even play without any class at all. What really makes this game stand out, though, are its boss fights, and the progression that goes with them. Most of the fights are very well designed and a lot of fun to fight, especially in the later game. Terraria is also multiplayer, which vastly improves the gameplay in my opinion. Sekiro Shadows Die Twice is a Soulsborne game made by From Software, where you play as Sekiro, or Wolf, a shinobi in the late 1500s Sengoku era-inspired Japan. The lore and story in the game are pretty well designed, but what really makes the game shine is its gameplay. Sekiro fights with a katana called Usabi Maru, which can attack, guard, and deflect. But Sekiro is also equipped with a shinobi prosthetic, which allows you to attach a number of prosthetic tools to it to use in various ways. An interesting thing about Sekiro's combat is that most of the time you aren't focused on bringing down an enemy's health, but its posture. Most enemies can guard your attacks to take no damage from them, but they take posture damage instead. When an enemy's posture is broken, you can perform a death blow, which effectively one-shots them. The reason this game is so good, in my opinion, is the swordplay. Bosses such as Genichiro Ashina are super fun to fight. The act of exchanging attacks and deflects various counterattacks gets your blood pumping, or as Ishin would say, gets your blood boiling. I highly suggest this game for any fans of Souls-like games, or just games with really good swordplay. Now we're on to the top 3 games. These were the games that impressed me the most this year, and that I just generally enjoyed playing the most, and I would recommend them the most to anybody watching. Subnautica is an underwater survival game where you play as Riley Robinson, the employee of a spaceship that crashed on the ocean planet of 4546b, who has to fend for himself to be able to escape the planet. I've never really liked survival games before, with the exception of Minecraft and Terraria. However, this game does everything right as a survival game, in my opinion. And as a bonus, there's an option to not have to worry about food and water, which is what I normally hate the most about survival games. This game has so many reasons to play it. When you feel like playing a fun, chill game to relax, that's a possibility with Subnautica. But if you feel like playing something that gets your heart racing, Subnautica does that too. My personal favorite part of this game is easily the exploration. If you're bored, you can hop into an underwater vehicle, face a random direction, and just go, going down whenever you get the chance. Doing this allows you to find new areas, which in turn have new creatures and new equipment, and new resources to further progress the game. Each area is designed to be beautiful. The first time I dove into the shallows, I spent a good 20 minutes swimming around admiring the environment. And that was just the beginning. Not a single area in the game was bland or boring, even when I went to the dunes and thought, okay, this area is pretty lame. I then heard the PDA announce several leviathans nearby, and suddenly I could see 2 to 3 shadows of massive sea monsters in the distance. It was a lot more creepy. The game is very atmospheric, and it can easily cause fear in some people, and the different leviathans encountered are all very cool, and also pretty terrifying at first. The game also has a pretty cool story and a really cool ending. I would definitely recommend this game to anyone, especially if you like survival games. Dead Cells is a roguelike game with some elements of Metroidvanias as well. In this game, you play as the Beheaded, a strange creature infected by the malaise, which is a plague affecting the island. It takes over the body of a beheaded prisoner. In this game, you make your way through a number of areas that all eventually lead to the throne, where you fight the final boss and can beat the game. So you think. Upon defeating the game, for the first time you unlock the boss stem cells, which are essentially new game pluses. There are 5 boss stem cells in total, and each one greatly increases the difficulty. I'm currently working on boss cell 3. After running all of the 5 boss stem cells, a new door behind the final boss opens, leading to a new area and an eventual true final boss, which I accidentally spoiled for myself. The game has really cool visuals and sound design, and an incredible OST to go along with it. Tons of areas to explore, tons of items to unlock, and tons of enemies to kill. I'm normally not too much of a fan of roguelikes myself, but Dead Cells is a definite exception. And lastly, number 1. My favorite game of 2020, Dark Souls 3. Dark Souls 3 is a Soulsborne game made by From Software, and the third installment in the Dark Souls trilogy. In the game, you play as an Unkindled, who seeks to kill the Lords of Cinder and return their souls to their thrones so that you can link the fire. This game has several bosses, most of them being really well done and enjoyable. In fact, one of the optional bosses, the Nameless King, is my second favorite boss of all time, the first being the final boss of Sekiro. The game is overall just really fun to play, and it has some co-op and PvP systems which can improve the game. Lastly, the OST is one of my absolute favorites of all time. Although I don't have quite as many really good things to say about the game as some of the others on this list, the actual gameplay, bosses especially, are better than the others, and it's just a really cool game to talk about with other people. I could go on for hours talking with friends about characters, lore, bosses, or even just the OST. If you haven't tried this game yet, I highly recommend it. You don't need to have played the first two, but I suggest you play Dark Souls Remastered first, as it will improve your overall experience with Dark Souls 3, especially the final boss. So that's it. My 10 favorite games of 2020. I don't know how or if any games in 2021 will be able to top this, but I suppose only time will tell. Anyways, that's it for me for the next several months because I don't do anything ever whatsoever. I'll see you all later.